Welcome to How to Talk to Weirdos. Employee surveys show that the most common complaint in corporations is communication. Self-described weirdo Jeremy Doran is here to help. As host of the How to Talk to Weirdos podcast, Jeremy shares everything he's learned about communication. As an engineer, speaker, coach, and student of psychology, he shares his findings, tips, and techniques, plus his conversations with experts to help all of us, especially us weirdos, talk to each other effectively. And now, here's Jeremy Doran.
Hello and welcome to How to Talk to Weirdos. This is a podcast that deals with communicating well with people who are very different than you are. When people are different, it can feel like they're weirdos, which makes communicating difficult. But remember, we're all weirdos, at least to someone. I am very excited about today's guest. Today we have Melissa Bowler. She's a comedian and a professional development consultant who's taught thousands of professionals and students all over the country. Her curriculum and interactive workshops teach folks how to utilize the lessons learned in comedy to better connect and work with other humans. Welcome, Melissa.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
The reason why I'm so excited to have you here is I do talks and workshops on communication, and I often reference improv. But the place where I'm taking improv classes is the place where Melissa teaches improv classes. So now we get the actual experts to talk to us. To get us started, can you talk a little bit about what improv actually is so that everyone listening is on the same page?
For sure. Yeah, so improv is most often comedic improv. And it is sort of like sketch comedy that is written, acted, and directed in the moment. So everything you're seeing is made up. It's some folks come in thinking it's going to be stand-up, but it's not like stand-up. It's way more scene-based. Sometimes game-based. One of the most famous improv shows is Whose Line Is It Anyways? That's a lot of folks are familiar with that, which is a type of improv called short-form improv. And then there's also long-form improv, which is similar to how Curb Your Enthusiasm or Super Troopers was filmed. So that is more scene-based, character-based. Everything is just made up.
Excellent. Yeah, people always ask me, they're like, but you know a lot of what you're going to do ahead of time, right? I'm like, nope, we know absolutely nothing about what we're going to do. It takes a while for people to wrap their brains around that.
For sure.
Can you tell us more about the workshops that you do at companies? I was looking through your website and it looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, I do a lot of professional development using improv. And I actually started off training sales students at Bryant University. That was my first ever gig into this field. And improv, as anyone who's in sales can probably tell you, sales, a lot of it is thinking on your feet, making up as you go along, thinking quickly, forming connections, and that's really what improv is. So the skills translated immediately. And from there, I was able to build more clients and diversify my offerings. And now I work with a huge list of fields. And really, the thing is that improv, because it's so much about conversation and so much about connecting to your fellow human, it's applicable in every single field, except for, I guess, folks who would be working by themselves alone in a room. They might not need improv as much.
So a lot of what you talk about is the thinking on your feet and reacting.
Yeah, a lot of that. Also adaptability, too, is all improv. And so is empathy, because the only way you can act is if you're empathetic. So improv also deals a lot with empathy and biases, because comedy is also all about stereotypes and biases. It's how we know things are funny. So and you can explore all of those things and really understand how your brain works through comedy.
Interesting. I have found that for myself, active listening is a thing that I talk about very often with people. Mm-hmm. And it's something that then translates back and forth between real life and business life and improv, because the ability to not be thinking ahead is crucial in both places. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of times our brains are filled with assumptions. When someone asks us a question, we assume we know what they're intending. We assume we know what they're talking about. When we answer, they assume that we're on the same page as they are and are answering the question fully because they know what they intended with that question. Any kind of conversation is filled with assumptions and you're already thinking what the person's going to say before they're even saying it. And so unlearning that and really being present in the moment is really crucial to really good listening. And it's hard. It's super hard. I'm a much better listener on stage than I am in real life. So I've practiced that skill there and I can get into it, but it's really tough.
That's funny because I think I'm a better listener in real life than I am on stage. I catch myself on stage because I'm so worried about what is going to happen next because I feel like I'm on the spot that I'm thinking and I'm not paying as much attention as I want to. I feel like in real life I'm better at it because, I don't know, maybe it feels like less pressure.
Yeah, well, I think that makes sense. I as someone who's been on the stage a good portion of my life at this point, and I've had a lot of shows, I am much more comfortable on stage than I am in real life situations. So, but that's why I also chose comedy and improv to be my career, because that is where I am the most comfortable. That's when I feel the most like myself. But I know that is not the typical experience. Like most people in my workshops are like, this is going to be terrible. And they think they're great. And it's so far I've yet to have someone hate it after they leave. So I think I had a lot of people tell me that they are going to hate it. And then afterwards they tell me, they're like, wow, I was wrong about that. That was actually fun. Because improv is really just games and it's play. And it's hard not to have fun when you're playing games.
Yeah, people are so terrified of it. It just seems scary to them. But like you say, it's games and you kind of have to act like you're a little kid. And the way little kids just react to stuff, that's what you need to remember how to do.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Tapping back.
Yeah. and tying in the child that you might hear podcaster. Yeah. It's interesting having two little kids. It also makes me see how the fundamentals of comedy are inherent to human nature, because kids learn really early that if they say something that's obviously false, it's funny. And that's sarcasm. That's what sarcasm is. So we learn it as a more advanced skill as an adult. But kids learn it really early. They know if they say something funny and false, that it's going to get a laugh. They learn that if they say something that we didn't expect them to say, but it's really truthful and applicable, they're going to get a laugh. So, because that's the truth in comedy. And so I know my kids are already so good at improv, and I know one day they're going to lose the skills and I'm going to have to reteach them. But right now they're pros, they're natural pros, because they are engaged, they are listening, they are present in the moment, they are being mindful. That's stuff that we condition away from ourselves culturally. Kids have it. Okay. So I think it gets conditioned out of us as early as school. And that might be controversial to say.
That makes it fun.
I noticed that. So my son goes to school. My daughter does not currently, just because they. But I noticed that my son every year loses more and more of his ability to play. There's more peer pressures. There's more bullying. There's more pointing out of things that are different and chastising them. It was. This is something I had as, I think, both an improviser and a parent epiphany, in that I was raised in a culture of point out unusual things, which is great for improv. As you know, one of the secrets to making comedy, you highlight the unusual thing, you make a game on it, you make a pattern out of it, bada bing, bada boom, comedy. So it's great, which it does make me very naturally great at improv. However, it does make me also naturally great at being a bully. It was something I had to confront and admit to and deal with and overcome, because I was raised in a culture of bullies. A lot of us were, I'm sure this is something folks relate to, but the idea was, from a very good intent, was that if I bully, and it's not, you're not saying bully, you're saying if I point out the weird thing about my kid early, they will stop doing the weird thing and then they won't be bullied by others. So what we do at home is we try to spare our kids from being bullied by pointing out the weird thing that they're doing so they don't get bullied at home. But what it actually is doing is that we are bullying our kids so they don't get bullied on the outside. And that doesn't work. It doesn't work. I was raised in that kind of household. I know my parents and my siblings had good intents. They were trying to save me from myself, if you would. But what I've had to do now as an adult is learn how to tap back into my inner weirdo in order to be more myself and be more efficient at communication. So we have to unlearn that stuff. And I see it a lot in schools, because schools you have all these kids trapped in a confined space, and kids are just mimicking and reflections of their parents. And a lot of parents out there haven't done the work to unpack all of the stuff that they went through while being parented, and don't understand that they are creating bullies.
I think each generation is getting a little bit better and a little bit better each time.
I completely agree. I do, because there's a bunch of stuff that's naturally shed every time, because you always think to yourself, well, I know I'm not going to do that to my that's one thing. And we focus on that, and it's great. And so we don't do that thing. And but I think it's something we have to like look at what else is going on. In what ways are we stifling our kids? And realizing that, I realized how much I was stifling myself. And so it's like everything, again, comes back to improv and play. And it's like the more I live my life like it is an improv scene and an improv format, the more happiness and joy I find. And the more courage I have and confidence I have too. So it's also pays dividends in that way.
That is wonderful. I myself am the youngest of 10 kids. And what I learned growing up was that if I express an emotion, it's probably going to be used against me. So I learned very early to be not expressive. I think I naturally am that way anyway, but I really refined that skill. And now I'm spending the rest of my life trying to unlearn that skill. I was taking a workshop at an improv workshop, and in the scene, someone had just accused me of something really awful. Mm-hmm. And I responded to the words the teacher's like, respond to it the way you would in real life. Show that emotion. I said, I would have actually shown a lot less emotion in real life than I just showed right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it helps us unlearn things.
It really does. Stage me is so much more bold and brave than real life me. And I hope to one day fuse the two me's. And I think some people have the opposite feeling, like stage them is not them, is more anxious them or whatever. I think so. For me, being the last of four, that's nothing. Usually that's usually impressive to some folks, but
it still is.
So, like the last of, you get a ton of attention, but you get more attention than the other siblings, and they notice it. But you still don't get enough attention because your parents are spread too thin. At least that was my experience. I can only imagine with 10 that you might be feeling something similar. And I know for me, the stage gave me a place where I could suddenly get that part soothed. I love it when all eyes are on me. And I'm like, part of me was like, okay, that's definitely a childhood wound, but we're going to keep using it to make great comedy. I think it's something where as also too, being raised female, you're also told to repress at the expense of others. And like being a good mom, quote unquote, and I think this is true probably for all genders, that being a good parent in general means martyrdom, and that you have to sacrifice everything in order to be good. And that's the kind of blueprint I was raised with. And that is wrong. And in good improv, you don't sacrifice everything you do. You still keep your things in the scene, and you justify them, and you integrate them, and that makes for better comedy. So we know, like, all these life skills that improv has taught me, I feel like they carry through to everything. And I find myself using them in so many ways to unlearn some of the toxic behaviors I have in my brain, to be a better parent, and then also to like motivate me to even like clean my house. Like, I find it, I apply it to everything. And, maybe it's because improv is my number one passion, but maybe it is the secret to life. Who knows?
Let's go with it's the secret to life.
Yeah, I'll go with that too.
And now everyone has the answer. It's
right.
Great. As I said, when I talk about improv, a lot of it is about active listening. In your workshops, are there any particular games or activities that you do to help people with that?
Yeah, a lot of games in improv. There's your mom. We're gonna go to the kitchen. Okay, pause. Actively. All right. So for me, I have a hard time with listening personally. I'm neurodivergent, and that makes it sometimes very hard to focus on listening to folks, especially if the topic I find not interesting, which is something that I know a lot of other folks with neurodivergencies and a variety of kinds that are like, they relate to that fact. So for me, I have to really try. A few of the exercises that we like to use are anything in which you need to use your memory to repeat something, because you're going to notice you're going to be paying attention a lot more to that. Also things in which you have to be inspired by like the last word someone said, or the last line someone said, or the last position someone was in, because there's listening that we do with our bodies and visually. And I know ears are listening, but also the visuals are listening. This might not be good science, but I hope our listeners know what I'm saying. In that when you are paying full attention, you are, looking at the person, feeling their energy, being present in the room, you're going to hear a lot more too. So some of it is also about like actually observing too, and not just listening. So observing makes for good listening. But when you're looking at improv exercise outline, what to do is you just want to look for ones in which you have to do something with something at the end so that you have to pay attention all the way, or something where you're going to have to repeat something so that, again, you have to pay attention through. Me personally, I try to, in my head, say the words along with them as they're speaking, which I know isn't possible, right? You're not doing it at the same time. But right after, I find if I have to really listen to someone, I will, in my head, pretend like a person in my head is also saying these words at the same time to me. I don't know if that trick works for anybody else. This is a skill I've developed over the years. It's like a life hack.
Listening to the last word, I think, is pretty interesting, because I think most people probably start out listening, but by the time the other person's done, they're really thinking about, oh, it's almost my turn. So paying attention at the end, that's a good trick.
Yeah, yes. Doing stand-up on a video, and I counted how many times I took a sip of this like single beer, like in a 10-minute set, and it was just basically every other line I would take a little sip of this beer. Like it was like a little safety, emotional support beer, and I was like, that looks terrible. Why am I doing that? And I just wasn't conscious of it. And once I saw that video, the next time I was on stage, it was dramatically less, because I was aware of it. I was like, okay, put it down. Put it down on a little stool. Like, clearly I like to bring it up because for whatever reason it made me feel cooler, I think, probably, when I was first doing stand-up. But I needed to, like, put it down on a stool, take it out of my hands, and then I stopped doing the little sips. And so sometimes you have to, look at yourself in that reflection, which is great about improv and theater and performance in general. Often you have someone sitting on the outside saying, hey, you know what's weird? You do this. And they get to point it out to you. And you get to see like, oh, all right, okay, I'm going to look at that differently. Because it is really, really hard to understand yourself and have a good outside perspective of yourself. That's very difficult. I don't think anyone's really capable of doing that thoroughly.
No, and no one likes it. When I have to watch myself to edit these. I have to watch and listen to my own voice and hear the idiosyncratic things that I do. And I'm like, oh man, that is awful. You learn a lot. It's a challenge to get that self-feedback.
It is. And, a lot of that is because we only have certain formulas for what we deem as successful and nice and beautiful and good in this world. Like, it's, you have to look a certain way, sound a certain way, talk a certain way, and that's what success, that's what's good is. And that is such a narrow definition, and it's based on these terrible eugenic mindset. Like it's based on really terrible thought processes. So if you take a minute to pause that and realize that the standards that we've been hammered with aren't coming from human, they're just coming from corporations. They're coming in a way to sell you something. You're supposed to be thinking that everything is wrong with you, you can start to see that like it's not so bad. And one gift I do is watching other people, because I'll watch someone else do something that I've been doing, and I say, oh, I don't mind it when they do it, and that's interesting. You know, I think we are our harshest critics often, and you know, it's important to take a step back in that, like, you know, why do I hate it when it's with me, but I don't hate it when it's in another person? And that's probably because you've just been kind of using it to beat yourself up all this time. And, you know, we find comfort in things that feel the same. So we continue to do stuff to ourselves because it's like, oh, that's what I'm used to. But it's important to unpack that. I used to hate the sound of my voice. I was like, it's too deep, it's too nasally. And then, like, you ever listen to Lady Gaga sing? She's got this super beautiful, deep, nasally voice that we love and cherish. And I'm like, oh, right. So you're going to start singing next? Fingers crossed. Let's keep it going. I'm going to do my next career in. If I had her talent, I would absolutely. That would be next. That would be next. I like it. You're going to spend your whole life on stage singing, improv, comedy. It's all good. I would love to. Yeah. Have you? Going back to listening and the fact that I'm an introvert, when you're doing classes, have you found that certain personality types have more or less of a struggle with listening, and or certain people at companies? Have you noticed any trends? Seems the higher up in the business you are, the less likely you are to listen. That sounds right. I've noticed. I bet most employees have noticed. It seems like the higher the promotion, the less likely you are to listen. I find the people who are the people you love working with, they're often the best listeners. You know, when I go into a workspace, I don't know anybody when I walk into a room, and I don't know any of but in a few games, I can see who is going to give me a hard time and who is already invested, and who, you know, like, I can read them from their body language. And the people who give me the hardest time are always the people who perceive themselves as usually having a ton of power and are not used to not, I can't find you. That's gonna be fun to edit out. Let me give you a pause. So the people with, oh, Pepper, hi. I know you're hiding. Okay. So the people with the most power in the room tend to be the worst listeners. And I find the people with the least amount of power tend to be the best listeners. And I think that's true because when you don't have a lot of power, you have to listen really well. You have to be observing everything because you're always looking for a way to regain some of the power that's been taken from you. And when you have a lot of power, you don't think you ever need to do that because you're in charge. Everybody should listen to you. You're owed a certain amount of respect. Hello, Pepper, you're hiding. And so you get used to that. And I think the more folks have had power in their life, the less likely they are to be good listeners because they're just not used to having to listen. They get to declare things. And, you know, there are certain demographic markers that tend to be able to spot folks like this, but I think it has more to do with power than anything else. You know, I like the times where I've been like challenged in a room. It's never been, it's only been by men. Like, I don't know why that is, why that demographic marker is there. But that's, you know, the only time I've ever been like, yeah. And it's interesting because I come from a stand-up background and now I'm more in improv. I treat them like hecklers. Like, you're not going to out heckle me, my friend. Like, I've come from stand-up. You know, this is a professional setting. I can cross more lines than you can. You work here. I don't. Like, so it's pretty quick. Like, I'm able to, like, sort of, like, take them down, which, of course, like, in a club, they'd probably go round for round a little more with me, you know? But in a professional setting, they quickly realize, oh, crap, I have to already do this, be a little better. So what I found in corporations are the leaders I like the best are really good listeners. Mm-hmm. It seems that when there's someone in a position of power, if they're truly confident in their position, they are happy to ask questions and listen and get feedback. And it's the ones who are less confident in the role that just push and don't listen. Yes. And, you know, the ones who are like busy focusing on how to consolidate power or how to influence others They're not good listeners. They're not focused on the people, on the community, on the resources they have. Because, like, I have a bunch of knowledge, but I don't have as much knowledge as you and me combined. So, like, and then you add another person. Whoa, like, so it's, to me, it's like you got to tap into all that knowledge, because the perspective I see things from, it's so skewed to me. I don't have someone else's perspective. When you get someone else's perspective, that's when you see, like, oh, like, this is a real problem, or this is something we can fix really easily, or here's a solution. And, right now I'm lucky that I don't really work for a boss, because I only do freelance. But it's really tough there for most people, because most people do have to just sort of, like, deal with the boss they're dealt with. You would. No. This podcast is on Spotify, though, right? Is it video always too, or?
I record the video, and I will generally put them up on YouTube, but not maybe this one.
Yeah. This might be one of the video.
Though this one might actually be, if I put the whole thing on YouTube, it might be the most popular video that I ever do.
With, like, people, when like, anyone who's a parent have kids around this, or have had kids around this age, are going to be like, oh yes, this is life.
Understood.
Yes,
that is life. All right, before we wrap up, I've got 3 questions that I like to ask of everyone. And the first one is, what is a favorite place you've traveled to, and a place that you would really love to go to?
So a favorite place I have traveled to just happened recently was Montreal. We took my son's 10th birthday just came up this year, and we asked
congratulations.
What do you want to do? I know, so great. And so, what do you want to do for your 10th? It's a big year. And he said, I want to go to Canada. And we were like, oh, we have to get you a passport. Okay, let's figure this out. And he loves dinosaurs. We found a dinosaur museum in Montreal, 5.5 hours away, and that's where we went. And this is my first ever family vacation. It took me to age 40 to get to one. And
wow.
So it was so special. And he had a blast, and he loved it. And we learned some French phrases before we went up and all that. And it was really, really tremendous. And then a place I always wanted to go is Ireland. I've never been. And I found out recently, genetically, I am almost 100% Irish, which I did not know.
Wow.
Fun to find out.
Yep, then you're going to have to go.
I know. I feel like a genetic calling.
It's pulling you.
Yeah, right.
Second question is, who do you think is a great communicator? And it can be either a public figure or someone in your life. I
have found my favorite communicator actually is you probably know him, is our AD Jared Altmeyer.
Yeah.
I don't know if he knows I'm going to be shouting him out. I don't know if he knows if he thinks himself a great communicator, but I noticed with him is that if you ask him something, he's going to answer you. If you need it, like, he will spell everything out in an email. He's going to give you all the information that you need. You ask him for clarity, he's not going to say, like, questioning, like, why do you care? Like, he's just like, oh, you want clarity? No problem. Here it is. I have found that he's also someone that even when no matter what, I call him and he'll, like, pick up. And so it's, so maybe that's like communicator and also friend. Does that count? 2 points.
Yeah, double. But, I have to agree with you. I've written and asked him questions and kind of expected to get a curt answer, and there was nothing of the sort. He just, like, bore down and gave me much more than I would have expected. It was great.
Yeah, and I love that. I love knowing so much information, and I really like folks who provide that.
All right. Third question, and just so you know, I'm not going to let him know that you said a nice thing about him. We'll see if he finds it out for himself.
Yeah, sounds good. That's a good test.
What is one tip that you would like to give everyone about how to be a better communicator?
So it's the tip I probably need the most, right? Which is, it starts with what you can do. Fix what you can fix. I'm so quick to blame other folks for any kind of lag in communication. Like, if someone doesn't email me back or text me back, I'm like, well, forget them, right? But I can do stuff. I can circle back. send another text. I can send another email, say like, hey, just checking back in. I often let it go to my ego that someone doesn't respond to me in a manner in which I have a preconceived notion of how long it's going to take. And so I have to do a lot of that inner work of pausing and saying, okay, wait a second, why do I appreciate it when someone comes back to me, circles back to me to give me another chance to reply, and I don't give other people a chance to do that? So let me do that. Let me give people a chance to be busy and be hectic and have read my text at the wrong time of day and put the phone down and forgot about it. And, all those things that can naturally come up. So a lot of it is all about the best communication thing you can do is to not take everything so personal. Realize that humans are humans and we're going to make mistakes, and give people a chance to get back to you, or, follow up with them. And I find people really appreciate it when that happens.
And it's hard to do. I know I've caught myself having a preconceived notion that someone's going to let me down in some way.
Yep.
And if I'm not careful, I kind of make it happen. I don't do anything to prevent it from happening. And so I'm complicit.
Yes. Our assumptions and preconceived notions about other folks can really get in our own way. Because, sometimes it's just like a really silly reason that they didn't get back to you in that moment, and or didn't answer your question, or or misunderstood you and said the wrong thing. So I'm trying to assume most people's intent is good and positive, and approach from there. And if I'm wrong, well, then we'll cross them off the list. But more than not, people do have good intentions.
Turns out I am the center of my own universe, but I'm not the center of everyone's universe.
Exactly. That was a hard lesson to learn. Oh,
yeah.
I think I'm still learning.
Still learning it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Melissa, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on with us today. Can you let everybody know where a good place to reach out to you and or to engage you might be?
Sure. So I have a website, melissa-bowler.com. You can search for me. Bowler is spelled like someone who bowls. And if you look up comedy, improv, Providence, Melissa Bowler, you're going to find me. But check out my website. You can contact me through that. And I'm on social medias. I'm on the Providence Improv Guild stage every other Saturday, too. So you can also see me on stage sometime.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you on the stage.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to How to Talk to Weirdos. Check out our website at www.jeremydoranspeaks.com and follow Jeremy Doran Speaks on Instagram, and follow our LinkedIn showcase page, How to Talk to Weirdos, for more great content and to suggest episode ideas. Please follow us on your favorite podcast player to get our latest episodes. And remember, everyone is a weirdo to someone.
Editing nightmare for you.
So I can edit out the audio. I won't be able to edit out the video.
Yeah, no. This podcast is on Spotify, though, right? Is it video always, too, or?
I record the video, and I will generally put them up on YouTube, but not maybe this one.
Yeah. This might be one of the video.
Though this one might actually be, if I put the whole thing on YouTube, it might be the most popular video that I ever do.
With people, when anyone who's a parent with have kids around this, or have had kids around this age, are going to be like, oh yes, this is a few of the exercises that we're to use are anything in which you need to use your memory to repeat something, because you're going to notice you're going to be paying attention a lot more to that. Also, things in which you have to be inspired by, like the last word someone said, or the last line someone said, or the last position someone was in, because there's listening that we do with our bodies and visually. And I know ears are listening, but also the visuals are listening. This might not be good science, but I hope our listeners know what I'm saying. In that when you are paying full attention, you are, looking at the person, feeling their energy, being present in the room, you're going to hear a lot more too. So some of it is also about actually observing too, and not just listening. So observing makes for good listening. But when you're looking at improv exercise that line, what to do is you just want to look for ones in which you have to do something with something at the end so that you have to pay attention all the way, or something where you're going to have to repeat something so that, again, you have to pay attention through. Me personally, I try to, in my head, say the words along with them as they're speaking, which I know isn't possible, right? You're not doing it at the same time. But right after, I find if I have to really listen to someone, I will, in my head, pretend like a person in my head is also saying these words at the same time to me. I don't know if that trick works for anybody else. This is a skill I've developed over the years. It's like a life hack. Yeah.
Listening to the last word, I think, is pretty interesting because I think most people probably start out listening, but by the time the other person's done, they're really thinking about, oh, it's almost my turn. So paying attention at the end, that's a good trick.
Yeah, yes. I was raised in a culture of point out unusual things, which is great for improv. As you know, one of the secrets to making comedy, you highlight the unusual thing, you make a game on it, you make a pattern out of it, bada bing, bada boom, comedy. So it's great, which it does make me very naturally great at improv. However, it does make me also naturally great at being a bully.